Hi everybody, it's Keren here from tuppencecoloured.co.uk, and this is what I've been making today, and I think this would be a lovely way of presenting a little Valentine's gift to a special somebody who isn't maybe all that keen on pink. Stay with me and I will show you how I made it. These are the things that I'm going to be using today. I'm going to make my card out of Dapper Denim card. Now, I started off with a full sheet of A4, but I've already cut it down into strips that will go through my big shot to save a little bit of time. And this is the bit that I'm going to be cutting bits of embellishment and trim out of later on. I've got a piece of copper foil cardstock, and I'm using the Sure Do Love You stamps. I have copper embossing foil and Versamark ink. I've got my classic label punch, some copper trim, which is absolutely gorgeous, and the Lots to Love box framelets dies, or thinlets dies they should be. Alright, and I'm going to be using those to construct my box, and this is kind of optional. I'm going to be using Prussian blue brushes to give my stamping an aged and vintage effect. We're going to have quite a bit of Here's One I did earlier in this video, so I want to warn you of that in advance, and I've done that to save time, and certainly one of the processes that I did, I needed to leave it to set overnight, so please forgive me for doing this. First of all, I want to explain how I trimmed my my A4 card down, and what I did was I cut a strip 4.5 inches off the narrow side, and then I turned what was left around, and then I cut another piece that was 4.5 inches wide, and those two pieces will be the bits that I used on my my box die to cut out in the big shop, and that bit left over is the bit that I'm going to be stamping on and cutting out today. So I wound up with two pieces of the box pattern, and they kind of go together like that. So one flap is the bottom, one flap is the top. All right, and I also did some stamping on the gold foil is copper foil with this die. And I heat embossed it. So I stamped in Versamark, copper embossing powder, and heat embossed it. When you're heat embossing on copper foil, or any foil for that matter, first thing is let your heat gun get good and hot before you bring it to the embossing powder, okay? Because you want that powder to melt and set quick. Alright, speed is of the essence, because if you leave it too long and the foil gets too hot, it will pucker. And I've got an example somewhere of one where it did that to me, and it was like, ooh, I didn't expect that to happen. So that was the lesson I learned from that one. Alright, the other thing I want to say about this particular stamp is that if you can see in the middle, it's not a solid image. It's kind of textured, and there are bits there which will not stamp in the same way as the rest of the image. That's how it's supposed to be. All right, you haven't got a dud one. That is the way it is supposed to be. All right, so don't keep trying to stamp, pressing and pressing and pressing, trying to get a solid image, because you're not going to get one. So I wanted my coppery heart to look very distressed and vintagey. So after I'd stamped and embossed and cut it out, I came along with some of my little blue Brusho crystals. I actually sprayed it with starch. That is my favourite medium at the moment, because it's got a little bit more adhesive qualities than actual water. And then I just sprinkled on a few Brusho crystals here and there, and then just kind of played with it, dabbed it with the cloth until I got it how I wanted, and then I came out with this patina effect. Now, if that's not your cup of tea, you know, you don't have to do it. You can either use your copper foil as it is and don't put anything on it, or you can just do the copper embossing. I kind of like this effect because, as I said, I like that rather old, you know, worn and aged and vintage effect. So I've got quite a bit of stamping and embossing with this project, so I'm going to begin by stamping all over my my box piece here. Now this is going to be the front of the box. All right, so it's going to go kind of that way around. That's going to be the top, and that's going to have an embellishment in the middle. So I'm not going to do too much around there. And I'm probably going to need my little paintbrush here, and I'm just going to cover that with a nice layer of copper embossing powder. Okay, and to the other half of it. And again, I'm just going to flick away those little pieces. And have I missed any? Don't think so. I think I've got them all. Just brush those pieces away. Move that out the way. And now I'm going to heat set this. So I'm going to get my heat gun nice and hot. I've got it on the high speed, and I'll speed this bit up. I've already done this one, which is going to be the back, and they're going to go together like that. So next I'm going to stamp the heart frame and the sentiment I'm wanting to use. And this time I will remember to use my embossing buddy. Okay, so we'll do one at a time. So I'm inking up my stamp with lots of light tapping, and again this is another image which has got a sort of a vintagey effect. Alright, so you're not going to get absolutely crisp. It was meant to look worn and faded, and I think I've got that effect there, so let's emboss that up. And while I'm at it, I've got my sentiment, which is just for you, and I'll stamp and emboss that one along the bottom there. And I'll just heat these up. Now I'm taking my classic label punch, and I'm just going to punch out those words. Just trying to get it sort of centered in the jaws of the punch. And when I'm happy, which I think is about now, punch that out. Now there isn't a die or a punch for this this nice big heart shape here, so it's going to be fussy cutting with the jolly old scissors. So yeah. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my box together, and as you can see, I've embossed the back of the box, and I've put my tearing tape on ready. I'm just going to take the backing off, and now I'm just going to align this up I'm just going to fit them together just like that and fold that piece over. And I have burnished all my folds with my bone folder, so they get a nice crisp edge to my folds. So now I've got a piece of my copper trim, and I think I want it to be about that long. Okay, and I'm just going to spread out and kind of distress the ends of this bit a little bit so that it looks a little bit tatty and scruffy and well used and well loved. Okay, there's some little extra bits there that I don't want, and I've already had a go at this side, so that's kind of how it's coming together. And I'm going to pop this down into the middle of this piece with a little bit of liquid adhesive. Okay, and I want it to be kind of dangling off, almost like an old-fashioned Victorian sort of moustache. Cool. I've got another piece of copper trim which I've cut to be long enough to go all the way around my box with a bit over, and I've got some fast fuse, and I'm going to put a bit of fast fuse into the middle of the front of my box, and I'm going to stick one end of my tape into the fast fuse, and now I'm just going to wrap that around my box, keeping it as straight as I can. And I'm pulling it quite tight, but not super tight. I want it to have some movement. And I'm going to trim away that extra piece. Okay. And now I'm going to take this piece with the dangly bits, however you want to call them, and I'm just going to bang some fast fuse onto the back of that, and I'm just going to pop that into the middle like that. So the idea is that I want eventually to give the impression that that ribbon is coming out through the middle of that piece and holding it all together, which of course it isn't. It's all fake, it's all faux. Right, so on to my my copper foil heart. I'm going to put some dimensionals on the back of that. Oh, dimensionals, how I've missed you. And I'm using the full-sized ones. Could have used the half-sized ones, could have used the small ones, but you know what, I don't need to, so I won't. So almost finished. I have my Just For You sentiment, and for this one I probably could have used the smaller dimensionals, but do you know what, I'm just going to take one of the big ones and I'm going to cut it in half, just like that, and I'm going to pop one at this end. You see it fits exactly, and one at this end. Remove the backing, because otherwise it won't stick, and that would be silly. And I'm just going to line that up over the front, and I call that done. And there it is. There is my finished box. Now I've gone ahead and popped my Prezi in here, and I did put a little bit of adhesive onto the bottom flaps and the bit that tucked in, because I wanted to make sure that my Kit Kat, which is a pretty good fit, didn't actually fall out of the bottom. But if you didn't do that, if you didn't assemble the box all the way up, then you could just store them flat until you were ready for them. So there it is. I really, really love this shape of box. I think it is, it's just elegant somehow. But that is it for today. Do thank you very, very much for joining me. Would love it if you came back and saw me again, or if you subscribed to my channel, or if you hopped on over to my blog or my Facebook page and interacted with me that way. I would absolutely love it. But for now, thank you very much for joining me. I do hope I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.